This is PBS Reno Arts from the studio at PBS Reno in Reno, Nevada. I'm Dave Santina, and this is not your average show. This is one where I just, wanted to follow up with something that we did on ARTEFFECTS a few years ago now, and remember somebody who was important to me and to my guest, Connie Wray. How are you?
I'm good.
So, Connie, you're brand new at PBS Reno as the latest PBS Reno development officer. Sounds very police-like.
I know.
But you're not a cop.
I didn't get a blue outfit. I didn't get a hat. I did get some really soft, amazing PBS Reno t-shirts, though.
Very nice. Well, I'm glad. Well, we're glad you're here. But because you're here, there's an opportunity that I just wanted to take advantage of, and that is that we both were friends with someone who was part of our ARTEFFECTS series, Dave Mencarelli, who was in the stand-up comedy episode. If you're listening to this and you'd like to watch it, it's ARTEFFECTS episode 515. It was produced 5 years ago. And then a year later, in episode 629, we did a episode following up on the award-winning segments, and his segment was one of the ones that won an award. So we got to have him back into episode 629. So I encourage you to go and look, or go and find those and listen to them, or watch them and listen to them. But we lost Dave. Dave died a few months ago now.
Yeah.
Little over a month ago, actually. And I just wanted to remember him because we both knew him. He was a wonderful guy, and I just thought he deserved to be remembered, and we should take a minute to acknowledge him.
He was such an incredibly complex, funny, kind, generous person. And I really enjoyed his memorial service. We both were
there together.
That because it was going to a memorial service for a stand-up comic is very different.
Right. And he had stated clearly to his friends and family, if I remember this correctly, he said something like, if you don't make fun of me within the first 30 seconds of whatever you say when you stand up at my memorial,
Right.
I'm gonna be mad at you from beyond the grave.
You didn't know Dave.
Right. Right.
You had to be cracking a joke about Dave dying to really know Dave.
Yeah.
That was who he was. And I had an opportunity to work with Dave in so many different capacities and at so many different times in his comedy career. So I just adored Dave. He was lovable, and I loved that he had this commitment, even though every comic will say to you, he probably quit comedy 150 million times. Like 100, he's just like, I'm done. I'm not doing it anymore. I quit. But he would always get back at it. And I think what I really enjoyed, having an opportunity to go back and look at the ARTEFFECTS, that episode, was how hard he really worked. Because that's the job of a comedian, is that you don't think they're really working. And then to really go behind the scenes with Dave, where he was pulling out all this material that he had, that was Dave. He was always writing things down. He always had material that he was keeping track of, or would see something, as comics do, an everyday thing that they could turn into a comic routine.
Right.
And that was Dave. So I really enjoyed going back and seeing that because it showed Dave's creative process. And I thought that was just so nice that we got a chance to see that again.
I liked it too. I rewatched that segment, and I had pushed for that to be a story for ARTEFFECTS, and because of him. I knew him, met him through a mutual friend, and we hit it off, and we would get together periodically. We actually tried to produce a television program together years ago that I ended up falling off of pretty quickly because, as it turned out, I was not allowed by PBS Reno to appear in any other program, and so this was for another channel, and it was a local, low-budget thing, but it was, they wanted to do a funny show and try to do a comedy show, and I thought, well, that would be great, fun. I'd never been able to do anything like that. So let's do it. And It turned into a series that actually got some broadcasts. It was called the Half Hour Comedy Hour, I think.
Yeah,
as
Half
it
Hour
turned
Happy
out.
Hour. It
Half
was
Hour
great.
Happy Hour, yeah. And so they did that for a while. And
it became kind of a local late night classic.
Yeah.
People enjoyed it. It became this little piece of Reno. People still today will say, oh my gosh, I would stumble upon that
Right.
show.
Right.
And it was hilarious and it was funny because you knew where they were at or what they were doing. I loved it so much.
It was fun. So anyway, that progress or process, trying to make that show happen, and then just being, peripherally attached to it, I would help them with technical stuff because I couldn't be in it. So I would help them sort of get their files, the video files done. Anyway, so I spent a fair bit of time with Dave, and we became pretty good friends. And he was very, very self-effacing. He struggled, I know, with confidence and with, there's a bit in that Artifact story where one of the comedians, the other comic, says, there's the stereotype about the comic who is depressed, and that's not always true. But in this case, it was true.
And Dave's comic routines talked about him battling his mental health.
Yeah.
His mental health was something that he struggled with, and was able to, like you said, like self-effacing, make these comic jokes, but in a way, it was healing for him to be able to, number one, to share that and
Yeah.
to have that connection with the audience. I think there was a lot of people in the audience that felt the same way that Dave did, and he was able to connect with them on that level, which was so different. And I always was impressed with, even when he was at his lowest point, his ability to reach out to the right friends. He did, there was a group of comics that he would meet with, I want to say monthly, and it was a creative space for all of them. And I know that Dave would talk to me after those meetings, and it would really bring him back up. And not only because it was this creative process, but it was a safe space for him. He had this group of comedians that they could come together and rip different material, test things out, feel comfortable, and I think just talk. And I was impressed with that because there's not a lot of men that can do that.
Right.
And this was a group of men that were dealing with their own demons and were able to let it out in this comedic, comic, this amazing creative process.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating to see that, or to know that happened, because this is a way, stand-up is a way for a lot of people to get their therapy, is to get up and talk about things that are bothering them that they maybe don't want to face in their day-to-day life, just dealing with their friends and family, because you can't always talk to everybody about the same subjects. But not everybody's willing to hear it. Not everybody can handle it. Not everybody is going to give you what you need to help you. And he was on both sides of that. He needed the help, but he also embraced that he needed the help and talked about it openly and the value of it. He was very active on social media for years, openly talking about mental health and his own struggles. And I so admired that. It was, to me, just the most raw and open expression of his humanity. And he did it to help other people, because he knew, even though it was something that many people would be ashamed of or feel embarrassed by, he said, no, look, I need to talk about this. You need to know that people are going through this besides you, because that's the thing, right? There's so many people who go through these situations and don't have anybody to talk to, or don't feel like there is anyone else going through it. They feel alone. And he was saying, you're not alone. I'm dealing with all this stuff. But he would do it with a sense of humor and try to, in a way, he was indicating it's okay. You can continue. You can make it. But it's okay to talk about it and to say, I'm struggling, and get help.
Dave also struggled with diabetes, and it was very challenging for him. And I would say that is really the demise of
Yeah,
what had happened. That was really the downward spiral.
He did have diabetes that I believe he said it was his own fault.
Yeah, he let it go.
Let it go.
And he wasn't, I think the diabetes was taking over his body, and adding that with his depression was really, he was starting to give up. And I know this, he actually said this to me when he was in the hospital the first time, when he came and he was just dealing with, he had severe sores on his body, his sepsis. He was in the hospital for quite some time. But those were such amazing visits. I know that sounds terrible, like he's going through all of this, but he was hilarious with the ladies that were, like, I'd get there a little early and he's like, I'll be right out. I'm getting my wounds cleaned. You know, he was like always making these jokes, and, you know, they love me in here. They need to take their extra time. You know, he'd be saying this through the curtain.
Right.
And, but we would have these really mixed conversations during that time, where some of it would be talking about how it's given me an opportunity to write being in here. Some of it would be, hey, Connie, this is why this happened, and I really gave up, and I really didn't want to go through this anymore. And that was really hard to hear.
I'm sure. Yeah. You're talking to someone you care about, and they're telling you that they don't want to fight anymore.
Absolutely. And I was, you know, you want to say the right things. You're just like, I love you so much, Dave. And I would say that was what was so challenging, at his service, was everyone said that about Dave. Like, he never knew how special he really was.
Yeah.
And when I was watching the Artifacts, I was thinking to myself, one of the conversations that Dave and I had long time ago was that he knew, as a comic, people would say this to him all the time, you got to get more out there, Dave. You got to show off all the things you're doing, Dave.
Right.
You got to put it out there. He should have been shouting it from the rooftops that Artifacts had won this award.
Right.
But it was not his style.
No.
It just wasn't his style. And he would tell me that. I'm not going to succeed in comedy because I don't have the ability to be all about me. Oh, you know, look at that. And then that became a joke. Like, oh, I got to be all about me if I want to be successful.
Right.
And, you know, which, you know, here we are today. Maybe he was right. Maybe you know the truth, Dave. But it wasn't him. That was not who he was.
Right.
And you would see his greatness when he was on stage, or I thought he was hilarious on the radio. He really turned, a lot of people don't know this, but he came in and was producing the show for KOZZ for a short period of time, and Smith and McLean. And he really brought the show around and helped that show. And they were iconic at that time here in Northern Nevada. And he was the one that really worked with them. So there was a lot going on with Dave behind the scenes that he never really was bragging about.
Sure. And he worked with a lot of people in radio in town. That's why I was wanting to get you to come in and talk about it, because you worked with him a little, and you know a lot of the other people he worked with. And at his memorial, everybody got up and talked about that. And it's people I know, recognize. I don't know personally. I'm acquainted with Max Volume, Panama, and Europe there. And so these are people whose radio files will know from this area. They've been around forever, but I'm listening to them tell stories and get emotional about what a wonderful person Dave Mencarelli was and how special he was to them. And I had no idea, because I only knew him as my friend who I'd go have lunch with, and we would talk about life, and he would talk about his self-doubts and his struggles and his victories and his personal life and his love for his family and his wife, and, you know, even with a divorce happening, still just openly loving his ex-wife
Absolutely.
and having a relationship that was, and I just thought, this is a guy who he's in tune. And even though he has his own depression issues, he understands that even. He's so aware of himself and others, and it's very sensitive, and you need people like that it helps to have people like that in your life. And then I felt honored that he wanted to talk to me about this stuff. It was an honor. It's the only word I can think of. And so I knew him that way, but you knew him much more on a personal basis, a regular interaction kind of basis, where you see him and you see him with other people, and then you'd hear these stories, and you probably witnessed some of that stuff.
Oh.
And so I wanted to just give him that opportunity, or give you that opportunity, to talk about what it was like working with somebody like that, and what and to see his impact on other people. You know, guys who sound like gruff and tough, like a guy like Panama, who you listen to on the radio and you think, this guy's, driving around on a motorcycle with black leather and spikes. He's got to be, right? Because listen to his voice.
Right.
And he's up there choking up about what a wonderful guy this person is, who helped him and his family. And same thing with Max. Max Volume talked about how he took the time to help his daughter. And it was just, it's touching to realize this person who I knew in this one small way had such an impact on all these other people, and he probably would never have realized it. And you don't hear about it until the person's gone.
It's so interesting because I think it has a lot to do with how we view success,
Yes.
how we view fame. Like, is success everyone in the world knows you, you're all over papers and podcasts and TV shows? Or in Dave's case, he was touching so many lives and impacting so many people and being a good friend to so many people that often he didn't think of that as success. He just thought, these are my friends. It wasn't that he didn't care about us. He did tremendously.
But it's just how you live.
It's just how you live. And as someone who's striving for success as a stand-up comic, as a radio producer, as a radio show host, you want to be successful. You want people to like you.
Right.
And that that is such a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
Because you want people to like you. You may have thousands who like you, but this one person over here, they're nasty, they're mean, they're saying negative things about you. That's the one that impacts you the most.
Right.
And it's silly, but I think that's what also makes us human, right? We have feelings and we're real. And I think Dave took a lot of that on.
I think so too. His instinct was to lean into the negative because he had self-esteem issues.
Yes.
And there are other people who are the opposite, who will ignore the insults or the critiques because they just have such a positive self-image, and they'll just power through it. And we all know people like that. We know people who get depressed and who have self-esteem issues, and you see how it affects their life. But what they don't seem to see is how they affect other people's lives. That's part of what I thought was important about this story is everyone who's listening to this, you have an impact on all the people around you that you don't even realize. I don't realize the impact I'm having on people. I can't until they say something, or if they don't, we'll never know until the memorial, right? It's kind of amazing, but it's worth talking about because we all have an impact on all the people in our lives, whether we realize it or not.
It's like those tentacles that you have that go out to so many people, and you're never really going to realize who you've touched, who you've had an impact on. And Dave was also in that position where he wasn't looking for accolades. He wasn't looking for you to say, gosh, Dave, that conversation really transformed my life.
Right.
You've really, really improved myself because of you. He would never expect you to do that.
Yeah.
I worked with Dave in so many different capacities, going back to working with him. So I worked with him when we would always refer to the remote tech as the worst job in radio. You're showing up with the station van, you're setting up so it looks pretty in rain or wind or blazing hot sun. Never was it always perfect day. Never.
Right.
So he's doing that. And often if you're working for a radio station conglomerate, there's 6 or 7 of these going on at one time that you're in charge of making sure nothing goes wrong. So very stressful, but still we don't treat you well, right?
It is the strange dichotomy of radio where
Absolutely.
you get abused if you're
Totally.
and you're working the hardest and you get the least attention
Right,
and the least
exactly.
love.
And you're supposed to like be thankful.
Right.
This is
your foot in the door.
You're in the door.
Yeah.
You're almost there. So he was just always hilarious because you could just see he's reaching the breaking point of the day, the blazing hot sun, the 6 different radio stations, the tent that blew away, the one that didn't have the right banner, all of the things that go awry. And then I would stand there and I'd be the last remote and I was always, I'll help you. I get it.
Yeah.
It's the worst job. So I remember specifically, he's loading the tent, and this is it. I'm like and he's like, I'm done. He's just talking out loud. I'm done. I'm never going to do this job again. This is the worst position ever. And he's just hucking everything into the station van. And I mean, I have this clear as a bell, and I'm like, you did a great job, Dave. And he's just like, yeah, did a great job for who? Nobody saw anything, and he's just like mumbling all of these things, self-deprecation, constant, on himself. And then he'd get in the car and he'd turn the van on. And I was like, thank you so much, Dave. Have a great rest of your night. And I was like, see you Monday. And he'd be like, yeah, see you Monday. And then you would see him on Monday.
Yeah.
But then being able to work with him on air, he was funny. I mean, he was a stand-up comic.
Right.
And I enjoyed having him on the show. He always was able to interject. I did the Bill and Connie morning show on Alice 96.5 for 24 years, and it was nice. I loved when we would bring comics in, and I enjoyed having Dave there because Dave also was a comic that it's not fun as a comic to come do morning radio. You've been up all night. It's the worst thing ever.
You're exhausted, and you're supposed to be entertaining.
Right. And some comics would just want to come in and do their routine.
Right.
And we, as the morning show, are like, no, we want you to join in. Like, that's how we enjoyed it,
just
Bill
be
and I.
one of the 3.
Just be one of the 3, interject. And sometimes you would get that, and most of the time you would not.
Sure.
So Dave was great because he could come in after a late night. He's the host at the Laugh Factory.
Right.
He would come in late, and he would be on the show, and he'd be on it. He enjoyed it. He knew when to interject and how to be a part of the show. He was great with callers. He was funny. And he would comment things like we had a segment called Hollywood Trash, and Dave could care less about Hollywood people.
Right.
But that's what was funny,
Right.
because then he would be interjecting about these stories that he didn't care. Nobody, and he would just really be calling out, you're listening to this dribble.
Right.
Like, do you really care what Angelina Jolie is drinking for her tea? Her getting her colon cleaned from some sort of tea. This is the stuff, he was always that kind of person on it.
Right.
So that was always so fun to have him on the job. And then later on, I worked for a station for a short period of time that we put on the air, We FM. And Dave would and I would do a segment called Deep Thoughts with Dave. and usually it was just these are sarcastic,
Right.
and it'd be like the guy who doesn't know how to drive, or we loved to talk about instant karma. It was something we enjoyed. When is the rarity of instant karma, right? When someone's riding you on the freeway, and then they get pulled over.
Right.
Like, those were the instant karma things. And Dave also, this is so random, he had a love affair with Mavericks.
Huh.
The gas station.
The gas station?
The gas station. I know this sounds crazy, but when you're a comic, you're on the road. So you're stopping at Mavericks. And he would do photos at the Mavericks. And it was hilarious. You'd be like, oh, what is Dave? Oh, he's got like a beef stick. And then those of us that knew about his diabetes would be like, should you really be eating that, Dave? Or making these comments. And he was like, the Maverick in Idaho is extra special. Like, it was hilarious. So he was always finding these funny little moments to show off his quirkiness. And I enjoyed every minute of that. So just being able to have his interjection of these, deep thoughts with Dave as he's traveling as a comic, or things that happen as a husband, or things that happen as a dad. And he was just so fun to create with.
Yeah, and so genuine too. Like, it was just natural from him. It was who he worked at it, but it was also his natural state of caring for other people and wanting to make connections. And he found these different ways to do it. And one of the things that I wanted to mention this before we wrap it up, that he, as a guest on a subject for an Artifacts story, which is how we at PBS Reno recorded him. He, you go and you make your appointment to meet your subjects, and you chat and you figure out how you're going to do your story. And our producer for that story, Guinevere Clark, went and spoke with Dave, and they worked together for a bit. But usually these are relatively brief. You just need to know enough to make sure you understand where we're going to record our interview, and where maybe we'll show the artist at work, and how we get into their studio, or whatever kind of art they do. And she told me that Guinevere told me that they talked for a good hour and a half or 2 hours, just about everything, not just about this show that we were doing, but they connected in a way that she normally would not have connected. And that's because of who he is. He probably wanted to know about her, because yes, you're doing a story about me, but the part of him that says, I don't deserve this, it turns it around, right? Talk about you. So they talked about all kinds of things, and they made a connection that normally doesn't happen. And that was special. And I remember when I found out that he had died, and this was late September, and I thought, she should know, because I know that she produced that story, and I know she really liked working with him. I want to make sure she's aware of this in case she wanted to come to the memorial, because they had a public memorial. And when I let her know, it affected her deeply. And I had not realized the connection that she felt there. And so even after he was gone, he's teaching me that you can make these connections that last even beyond what you're aware of in your own friends. This is a person I worked with for years, Guinevere, and I did not know that depth of connection had happened, because that was their thing. That was their connection. And he had this with a lot of people. And I just realized again how important it is for us all to recognize how that we matter to each other, and we make a difference to each other.
I'm really glad that you brought that up, because in my notes, I thought it was amazing when you did the recap that he's talking with her
on the episode 629, where she speaks to him about the story, because they had won an award,
right?
And so we were recapping them with the people who were part of it.
And she's saying, "Thank you for doing this," and then he literally comes back and says, "Congratulations to you. You did such a great job.
Right.
I had such an amazing experience. You
Yep.
was how it ended." And
Yeah.
that really made me tear up, because that was Dave. Exactly what you said. It would get turned around to be all about them. So that is what you see at that clip in that moment, is he genuinely is proud that he could be part of a piece that brought her accolades.
Yeah.
Like, he was so incredibly like, this is so great for you. And he made a comment too that he was happy that they ran it again the second time, because his parents loved to say he was on PBS.
Yes, they did.
And I just thought that was so sweet, because again, it's really not about him. It was always about everyone else. It was always about making others feel good. And to have that ability when you live with depression is quite honestly an incredible talent that I will forever remember Dave having.
Agreed. And so will I. And thank you for reiterating that, because it's super important for people to think about, because we all can make that difference in each other's lives, and we just don't know it. So thank you for coming and talking about it. We could do this for hours.
I know. I will wrap with one thing, because I started with this, is that he was a success.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. He was a success. Look at us sitting here talking about him.
I know. I mean, I know he's making comments right now.
Yes.
Really? You're wasting time on me? Yes, we are, Dave.
Yes,
we are.
We are. And it's not a waste. And
not at all.
You just have to accept it. Sorry, that's how it is. But, we loved him. And we weren't even the closest people to him, but we happen to be the ones who work at a public television station that has podcasts. So I thought, you know what, this is a chance to remember him, and I wanted to make sure we did that because he was important to a lot of people, and I just think the message is important to everybody. If you're listening to this, you matter to people, you make a difference, and the people in your life who make a difference to you, who maybe don't know it, tell them.
Yes,
tell them,
absolutely.
because we probably don't say that to each other enough in general.
It was the one thing I would leave when I was visiting Dave. Was like, I'd pop Brent, I love you.
Yeah.
He was like, get out of here.
Well, we love you, Dave. So I hope you don't mind that we talked about you for a good half hour here. Thank you, Connie, for the time. I appreciate you coming in and talking about Dave. It's important, I think, to make the efforts when we can to call out the people who need to be given the attention. And
Absolutely.
He was a special guy. All right, I got to wrap up with my spiel. So remember to watch Artifacts on PBS Reno by broadcast, streaming on pbsreno.org or the PBS Reno YouTube channel or the PBS app. Also, go to the website, pbsreno.org, and read art views. Now, do you have a question or maybe a comment or a suggestion? If so, please send them to me at podcasts@pbsreno.org. Don't get enough of that. My thanks to Connie Wray, and I want to say thank you for listening to PBS Reno Arts.